Right, so as we're looking, we are live. This is the Urban Agriculture live show. Trying to figure out the comments. I'll explain as I go a little bit. Just wild here. So, hit a couple of snags along the way. So, Saturday morning, woke up, my phone had just died. Straight up. Just died. It was an older phone. It had given it a go. So, I've got a new one on the way with a much better camera. So, going to continue the live streams. I woke up this morning, went, do you know what? I'm actually going to cancel today. I just went, nah. Do you know? I haven't got a camera. I have to borrow equipment. I have to borrow. I have to borrow someone's phone. Luckily enough, someone lent me a phone. So I went running. Did a bit of foraging, just sort of accidentally on the way. So we're going to talk more about that today, and so a little bit of like mythology behind foraging, some of the stories behind it, because these are really old plants in our culture and old plants in European culture that have been translated to other places, have introduced them. Um, and it was kind of great because I was like, oh no, I've got to do the stream now. So we're gonna, yeah. I got managed to get a haircut because luckily enough I live with my barber, which is great. So we're gonna do more about foraging today. It's gonna be more like a sit and talk kind of one. Um, just prior to that, this is Sunday lunch, or going to be part of Sunday lunch. This is just a huge pile of kale. We're just producing so much in the way of greens at the moment. So there's two types of kale. We're just producing a ridiculous amount, and they're only going to produce more as we go on. But really, today we're going to talk more about forage crops and some of the kind of things around that, really. So, first one with foraging. As much as I can tell you, do your own research. Go online. Make sure you've got a positive ID. If you want to send it to me, I will quite happily ID. Um, to the best of my ability, but never go the kind of rule with foraging. If you're not 100%, use more than one source. Just full stop. A misidentification could be life and death if you're not quite sure. So just double check and check again. There's loads of brilliant resources online, things like Wild Food UK. Um, just type in foraging. There's so many good online resources from there. Little one for foraging, especially if you're on private land, you have to ask. That's a massive one. You can't forage on private land without asking permission of the landowner. If that the sort of caveat of that is if say it's like an apple tree or something that's overhanging on a public path. Oh, it's great. Okay, I can see people. I didn't know if I had comments coming in, but yeah, comments coming in. So great. Hi Tamara. Hi Ashton. Um, then if providing it's overhanging what that private land is, then you can forage that, providing it's the overhang. But it's something to be careful of because you don't want to upset anyone. You also don't want to run it. It's illegal to forage on private land, so we're going to touch on a few of these. One big one with foraging is also the three Fs, so fungi, fruit, and foliage. But there's a lot of guidance about this online. The main one being that you're allowed to forage personally for your own pot, for your own house, but you can't go and forage commercially. Um, the same goes with things like seafood and that as well. As I said last week, I got actually in a bit of bother with the police about foraging seaweed and being in the water, which isn't cool right now. So I would just say what I've got to show you today in terms of the forage crops are very much just stuff I picked up running as I was going along. I don't think that's as big a deal, and we're going to go into some of the um, some of the benefits or some of the I'm not going to. This is again, do your own research. I'm not going to say this does this does this because that requires the science behind it. I've done a bit of research because I know these plants are good for you, but I'm not going to turn around and tell this is all about you doing your own research and going your own journey with it. Um, so the reason we're doing more forage crops now is because realistically, I haven't done any work in the garden. I haven't had to. That was the whole point. One of the guys who really kind of spiked my interest was a guy called Masanobu Fukuoka, who wrote a book about rice farming, I think in the 70s and 80s, a book called The One Straw Revolution. And his idea was to do nothing. You don't have to do any work. So at the moment, I haven't really been doing any work. And one of the principles within permaculture is that once the system is set up, that 80% of that work should be harvesting. So there really isn't a huge amount to show you right now. And so that's why, we're not gonna, gardening shouldn't be hard work. You kind of, it can be to set up in the initial thing, but with things like digging, people are obsessed with digging. You don't have to dig. Digging creates weeds, and weeds creates digging. So you're kind of swallowing the spider to catch the fly, and it sort of doesn't make a lot of sense in that way. As well, if I've grown a lot of tomatoes and stuff at the moment. I'm kind of taking some harvests from all my greens, and I've got some great lettuces and stuff growing. But if I would devote all my time to just growing just green vegetables and just essentially leaf crops, not tomatoes and that, which are a bit more hard work, my life would be a hell of a lot easier. So if that's what you're interested in, it's just getting those vitamins and all those minerals from the green production. Just do green production. Tomatoes are fun in the summer, but realistically, it's a lot of work for not a great deal of output. So back to what we did last week. We did a nettle compost tea. So it was a ferment, a bit like a sauerkraut or like a beer. So we've actually got 6 litres of these. I managed to get 3 bottles out of that, but it's not quite finished yet. I'll explain. If you were going to do that as what you call traditionally a compost tea, you would do it, and it would be treated like making a bit like cold brew coffee or something, where you would take that leaf and then you would soak it in water, leave it for a certain amount of time, and then you would strain off the solids, the actual plant matter, and you'd be left with this. But because we've done it as a ferment, more like a sauerkraut, or if anyone's had kombucha, that kind of thing, then it's a ferment. So what we're actually doing is we're reframing a little bit. We're going to talk about it, rather than it being a fertilizer, it's more like a probiotic. It's more like having a Yakult or a kombucha. So we're going to be, the focus is not on the fertilizer element, the focus is on essentially the microbes that are within that are going to benefit the plants in that sense. So yeah, we're going to look at a few forage crops first, and then we're going to go into some little bits and pieces which are going to be fun about it. But yeah, this just as a side note. Sorry, that was my water going over. So I said this is it's a concentrate. So I've managed to yield about 6 litres of this stuff. I'm going to take it further. I would not. It smelled pretty ripe. When you do ferments, they tend to smell really strong in the first instance, and then that sort of smell subsides and it mellows. But it is going to continue to ferment. So in these bottles, I'm going to have to actually burp them and take the top off. You see, there was a little hiss from that, because there's CO2 gas being produced in these. So if you leave these in the house and you forget about them, there's a likelihood they're going to burst, and that's not going to be a nice smell to get out of carpet, or just, well, yeah, you get out on your clothes, that's not going to be much fun either. So yeah, let's talk some forage crops. So the first one got to plantain, which is, there's 2 different types. I'll try and get you, I did pick 2 different types. They weren't great in terms of I just had to find 2, because this is called, it's a plantain, it's Plantago lanceolata, because it's long, it's lanceolate. It's a long, the long type. So there's another type called ribwort plantain, or Plantago major. So you have Plantago lanceolata, Plantago major, which is ribwort plantain in sort of common parlance, which is, you can see it's the same kind of leaf, but much thicker. It's a different shape altogether. So it's pretty common throughout Europe and Asia. It's not the one, when you think of plantains, people think of bananas or the relative banana. The Saxons, the Anglo-Saxons, considered it one of the 9 sacred herbs, or the mother of all herbs. Now, because, again, just to sort of reiterate, same as we did last week with the nettles, consider these medicinal rather than edible, because the kind of quantities you want to take in are not huge. You'd want to dilute that down, so to make a tea with it or something. But just because they're natural doesn't mean they're not really potent, because these are natural plants. They're out in the wild, and you want to be kind of careful of that. So one thing that first turned me onto it, there's loads of different benefits of it, but it often grows around stinging nettles. So the sort of one wisdom is that the plantains are actually better at curing nettle stings than a dock leaf is. But it's got a number of different benefits. So you're going to have it as a tea or a tincture, so stings, digestion. It's really good for lungs and sunburn. It's really good for immunity. Again, this is about you doing your own research. I can tell you what I think, what I know, what I've done, but that you need to kind of look on that wealth of knowledge that's on the internet to sort of tell you what that is. So again, it's medicinal rather than a food crop, where wild garlic is probably the most common forage crop people go out and get. And that is, yeah, it's it has its medicinal values and stuff, like all garlics do. Garlics and onions are really high, have a lot of value in that sense, but these ones, they're incredibly potent, so you have to, you should be mindful of the amount of that you take in. So in the Highlands, in the Scottish Highlands, they call it slan luce, called it the herb of healing. The Europeans introduced this to North America when we went over there, and in the time we did, and in sort of those colonial times we went over, but it was very quickly assimilated into the Native American kind of medicine, because they they called it, essentially they were like, well, this is a new thing turned up. They call it white man's footprint, but they very quickly assimilated into their like herbal medicine, stuff like that. So it was they seen the value of that, because it wasn't introduced to the North American continent until much later, until it was from Europe and Asia. Okay, so that is one aspect of that. So the other crop we're going to look at today, we're going to look at two more crops. This I picked up in my bum bag, so it's actually started to get a bit wilty, but this has got a lot of history for it. This is yarrow. Yarrow is an old, ancient thing. They found this in Neolithic sites, 60,000 years ago. One of the names of this is herb. It's the Latin, I'll try and get, because it's not, I don't know how good this camera is, Achillea millefolium, if I pronounce that right. So 1,000 leaves. It's the same root word of millefeuille, which is puff pastry. So 1,000 leaves. But you can see it has lots of small leaves on it. So they called it, one name for it was herb militaris, because it was very useful in battle. It's very useful for pain, inflammation. It's very good with blood and infection and antimicrobial. It comes under the classification of bitter herbs, and also it's fantastic for the digestion and the circulation. One use for it as well, or one health use for it, it's incredibly useful in fertility, because it's a circulatory thing. It's good with menstrual cramps, apparently. I mean, this is research I've not done. I've done that someone else has done, and then I'm kind of reiterating that to you. The Spartans used to heal injured soldiers with it, and it's associated with the feminine, especially in mythology, and Venus and the energetic flow. So it's one of those things. It's like these are just out there in these coastal regions. They're pretty prolific, so you're not going to be taking too much from that. Obviously, you need to be mindful of things like conservation areas, but for the most part, if you're in a spot, you're down by the beach and stuff, you'll find these. You're on coastal paths, you'll find them. But you just, you do have to be careful about how much you harvest. And the big one, especially for foraging, is above waist height if you can, because, well, if it's in a dog walker's spot, well, you know what dogs do when you take a dog out on a walk. Just bear that in mind. But the last one we've got is a crop called rock samphire. So most people may have, if you've been to a fish restaurant or something, samphire, the one you will have seen is marsh samphire. So it's kind of its equivalent. So this is rock samphire. I've not got the Latin on this. I just didn't really have time to research it. So this is a lot more, it's a lot more woody, the actual consistency of this. But at this time of year especially, it will produce very tender little shoots, and you'll feel them. It kind of, the tender shoots feel a bit more like asparagus or something, or the way sort of, if you were to pick up kind of, sort of small asparagus, it has a similar kind of thing, and it's very kind of lemony and peppery, and it grows on coastal regions. What I found is that there'll be tons and tons of it on any kind of beachfront. And if you can find a spot that's kind of slightly sheltered from that, so say it's across the road and just up, you'll still find it. But with that, because obviously coastal regions are so more exposed to wind and really, kind of brutal sort of weather kind of aspects of it. If you can find it that's in a slightly sheltered place, it will be a lot more tender, a lot more pretty. Fennel is another one that's fun. Another one I found recently, just to kind of wax lyrical, is sea beet as well, which is like a root. It's like the original beetroot and some wild cabbage. I see Matt's tuned in as well, because Matt was telling me he was foraging some wild cabbage as well, up in a nearby spot, and it's great. A little indicator as well, if you're not sure, always do your own research of foraging. I can tell you things, but you need to be checking out that you're identifying the right plant. Once you know it, you know it. But with the plantains, this is the flower. This is like the flower bud, so it looks like a bit of a Loch Ness monster kind of deal. And so yeah, it's one of these things. There should be more people foraging, but it should be part of your thing, because there's so many powerful medicinal properties of these, and so much history and mythology. Another one to sort of talk about it is ground elder, which was the Romans brought over here, and they actually planted it by the side of the roads in when they came to the UK, but so the soldiers would have fresh greens on the side of the road. So it's absolutely taken over and proliferated over the entire of sort of the British Isles. So we'll go through a little bit now. I mean, we've done kind of what I wanted to say, but we'll go through, because I haven't done a lot of work. I have done a big harvest down the kale and stuff. So at this stage, it's been cut. It's going, ow, like what happened there? It will recover. It just looks a bit wilty now. And then on top of that, I had some peppers that were just still quite small, so because I had a gap, I was like, well, let's put some radishes in there. The radishes will be out in a couple of weeks. By the time the peppers need some more space, then the radishes will be out. Or if not, if they're really competing for space, the radishes are pretty expendable. I'll take them out. Again, I've always said you want to keep this little crown of vegetation as far away from the soil as possible. I've had no trouble with slugs, really. I've had a couple of leaves eaten. And the nasturtium and the courgettes have done really well. They're just doing the thing. I haven't fed, haven't watered, haven't really done any work. This is the whole point. Why should this be work? What are you really going to achieve? I mean, I know there's an ethic in our culture that we should work hard, but this is not one aspect where it should be. So I'll take you around, because I haven't cultivated the big pit of the garden yet. But there was a little bed here that I just threw some stuff in, and we'll see what flies. So there's some garlic I did from a previous show. So they're just come in. It's a long crop. There's quite a lot of weeds in this bed, but I'm not very inclined to weed too much either. So it was kind of, because I sort of dug it over. I'm just going to sit down. I was like, well, the best way to deal with weeds is to have some kind of ground cover. So I just had a load of spare plants. I had some lettuces, which are in here. A lot of these ones that are here. But I mean, one of the best things I ever heard was that, all weeding should be casual. You can toil and struggle, but really, just let it happen. In fact, there's another little forage crop here that I'm letting proliferate. So this is another one. This is called sheep sorrel. So this is in permaculture, or in this kind of mindset, you call this a volunteer. It obviously likes it here. It's offered its services. So and it's a I don't know if it's a true member of the sorrel family, but it's very lemony. It's like so lemony. It's lovely. This is another crop. I actually planted because I lived here about 4 or 5 years ago. So this little crop here, it's called a Welsh onion, or a Japanese bunching onion. I'm not going to take a harvest. I might take a harvest of leaves. It's a strange crop because it will produce onion bulbs, but it will also produce like a leaf crop, like a spring onion. It'll produce onion seeds, which are again a good, good food source, a good source you can dry and so. But the main reason I'm going to grow this, or what the main harvest I'm going to take from this is the seeds, because it's what we call a perennial. So most of what you grow in your garden is an annual. So you grow it once, you sow it from seed, it grows, you harvest it, it dies, and that's it. This will come back every year. That's what a perennial is. So it means you'll have a crop of green onions and onion bulbs, but also you can harvest the flowers as well, and you can harvest the seeds. So the main harvest from this, and I'm going to give a lot of this away because I think it's such an important crop, is I'm going to mainly harvest this for seeds along here, because this is all stuff I planted years ago and it's just still here. It's just still doing its thing. So I've got a load of chives here and stuff. They're about to flower. These are all taken from a farm I worked on locally, and I could harvest the chives. They're all in pretty good shape, but actually what I'm going to do is mainly harvest the flowers. I might make some kind of chive flower mayonnaise. The flowers are purple, so hopefully we can color the mayonnaise purple, or do something, or dry them, and it's a nice garnish. It's quite pretty. But that thing, it's like let's alleviate work. I think with everyone having such a break from work, I'm realizing we don't have to work as hard as we have been. Well, not everyone's taking a break, and exactly like, so many key workers are out there still grafting harder than ever. But for those of us who are not, let's just grow some plants and have some fun. So I'm going to really leave it there for now. Got a few bits lined up. We're going to do some YouTube feeds and stuff like that. Some of the other bits I've been doing, some stuff around running. When I get my new camera, we're going to do some fun stuff. So I'm just going to keep this rolling for now, as we are. So next week we can come back stronger, and that's us done, man. Right, so I'll fill comments afterwards because I've just been yabbering on. Right, take care, guys. Have a nice bank holiday.